Hi, we're here at Realtime New York.
I'm Schneider Mike. I'm Mike Schneider, but I go by Schneider Mike. So Mike Schneider is the Tony Hawk of fingerboarding. He's a senator. He's a newscaster, editor of Variety magazine, etc. There's the polka king of Wisconsin is Mike Schneider. So I can't own that. So Schneider Mike, there's only one.
Right.
So that's why I'm Schneider Mike. But so I work for a company called Allen Gerritsen. I run the digital group there. My title is SVP Director of the Digital Incubator, and it's sort of a what's next agency out of Boston. And I'm really focused on sort of cutting edge and bleeding edge stuff, and location is one of those things. And we just did a panel here at Realtime New York on the future of location. We started off by talking about a little bit about the audience and who you could reach with location-based services. And we're still looking at sort of tech early adopters but Radio Shack noted that a person who checks in and unlocks a special tends to spend 3.5 times more than somebody who doesn't. So these tech early adopters, the people who are using Foursquare to check in, at least at Radio Shack, are very active in terms of purchasing. We also talked about 3 other things. So we talked about location from a deals, discovery, and a loyalty perspective. So there's this idea of these platforms out there like Foursquare and Gowalla and Scavenger. When you check in, you can unlock deals, and Groupon has one now called Groupon Now, and Living Social has Living Social Instant, and they're just deals. And so we talked a little bit about that, and we talked a little bit about the diversity of deals that you could put out there, and the kinds of deals that make sense. So Foursquare was on the panel, so they had. We talked a little bit about their specials platform. It's very comprehensive. It does everything from allow you to give a person who checks in a deal to what's called the mayor. The mayor can get a deal, so that's the person that checks in the most. That's like a competitive thing. There's a loyalty offer, so if you check in X number of times, something unlocks. There's a swarm offer, so if there's a certain number of people there. There's a friends offer, so if you check in with like a group of your friends, you get offers. So they're really testing into kind of creating other ways to get people to come in versus the 50% off of 50 to 90% off that you're seeing with like Groupon and Living Social. So that was one thing that we talked about. And we had Radio Shack on the panel, and they talked a little bit about testing and learning. So one of the things that is apparent is that we don't know exactly what this stuff can do, but it's inexpensive to test, and and anybody can do it. So anybody with a sort of brick and mortar can do it. But
yeah, that's what I wanted to ask you, because in the beginning, when I interviewed Dennis Crowley a couple of years ago, and things were just starting to build the buzz, it was still centered around the restaurant, that kind of environment. And I had asked him at the time, what's for the future? Because as those of us in the service industry, we want to tap into this and to see how that's happening.
So there's some ways for you to do that. Isn't Dennis Crowley a nice guy? He's a really nice guy. Hi, Dennis. So people who don't have brick and mortar, there are things that they can do. I mean, we had American Express, and these are big companies like PepsiCo on panels at Blog World, on the Blog World keynote a couple of weeks ago, and they were talking about sort of things that they'd done with Foursquare's API. So, and anybody can do this right now. If you have a developer and you have some understanding of what Foursquare can do, you can leverage the functionality and build it into your loyalty.
Yeah, but you just started with that very critical sentence, if you have a developer. Right. And I mean, you could have a developer, but they still are not, they're quasi. So is there a way for someone to vet out a developer for this specific purpose, that they are looking for a developer to help them leverage these tools and platforms?
Yeah, I think what you'd want to do is you just want to get you do a few tests out and just see if the developer understands the functionality of Foursquare, if they understand your idea that you want to put into place. So, for instance, we know that checking in is a very unnatural behavior. You've got to go to your phone, take out your phone. You've got to find, and it's in my pocket. It's stuck right now. It's really weird because you and I are having this interview, and now I'm going to my phone, so that's kind of rude in the first place. We walk in someplace, and then, hold on a second, I'm going to pull out my phone and do something. But you've got to pull out your phone. You've got to find an application. You've got to click on that application. You've got to find the place. You've got to click check in, right? It's kind of unnatural behavior, but
and interruptive.
Yeah, it's interrupting your current flow. But there's companies like Tasty Delight and American Express and Vons, PepsiCo, who have made it so that you can swipe your loyalty card and it will check you into that place. So there are ways to make check-ins passive, and technically, from Foursquare perspective, it's not that hard to do that. So if you have some control over your point of sale system, and if your developer knows your point of sale system that's a little flexible for you, you could in theory have them learn a little bit about Foursquare. And the API is beautiful. It's really easy to use. It's very well documented. Mad props to the Foursquare team for the way that they've handled their API. I mean, it's pretty easy to just integrate Foursquare into your system. You have to build a profile for people so that they can link their loyalty card to their Foursquare account and things like that. It's not like trivial, but it's not hard.